Top 9 Most Evil Women. 9. Queen Mary I. Mary was the only child of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon to live past infancy. Crowned after the death of Edward VI and the removal of the 9 days Queen Lady Jane Grey, Mary is chiefly remembered for temporarily and violently returning England to Catholicism. Many prominent Protestants were executed for their beliefs, leading to the moniker Bloody Mary. Fearing the gallows, a further 800 Protestants left the country, unable to return until her death. It should be noted that Elizabeth I shares position 10 on this list for her equally bad behavior. 8. Myra Hindley. Myra Hindley and Ian Brady were responsible for the Moors murders occurring in the Manchester area of Britain in the mid-1960s. Together these two monsters were responsible for the kidnapping, sexual abuse, torture and murder of 3 children under the age of 12 and 2 teenagers, aged 16 and 17. A key found in Myra's possession led to incriminating evidence stored at a left luggage depot at Manchester Central Station. The evidence included a tape recording of one of the murder victims screaming as Hindley and Brady raped and tortured her. In the final days before incarceration, she developed a swagger and arrogant attitude that became her trademark. Police Secretary Sandra Wilkinson has never forgotten seeing Hindley and her mother Nellie leaning against the courthouse eating sweets. While the mother was obviously and understandably upset, Hindley seemed indifferent and uncaring of her situation. 7. Isabella of Castile. Isabella I of Spain, well known as the patron of Christopher Columbus, with her husband Ferdinand II of Aragon, are responsible for making possible the unification of Spain under their grandson Carlos I. As part of the drive for unification, Isabella appointed Tomás de Torquemada as the first Inquisitor General of the Inquisition. March 31, 1492 marks the implementation of the Alhambra Decree. Expulsion edicts forcing the removal or conversion of Jews and Muslims. Roughly 200,000 people left Spain. Those remaining who chose conversion were subsequently persecuted by the Inquisition investigating Judaizing conversos. In 1974, Pope Paul VI opened her cause for beatification. This places her on the path toward possible sainthood. In the Catholic Church, she is thus titled Servant of God. 6. Beverly Allitt. The Angel of Death, Beverly Gale Allitt, is one of Britain's most well-known serial killers. Working as a pediatric nurse, she is responsible for the murder of 4 children and the serious injury of 5 others in her care. When available, insulin or potassium injections were used to precipitate cardiac arrest. Smothering sufficed when they were not. Although convicted with death or injury in 9 cases, Allitt attacked 13 children over a 58-day period before being caught red-handed. Allitt has never spoken of the motive for her crimes, but Munchausen syndrome by proxy explains her actions. This debatable personality disorder involves a pattern of abuse or harm to someone in your care in order to garner attention. Allitt was known as a child to wear bandages and casts over wounds, but would not allow them to be examined. 5. Belle Gunmas. Belle Gunmas was one of America's most degenerate and productive female serial killers. Standing 6 feet, 1.83 m, tall and weighing in at over 200 pounds, 91 kilograms, she was an imposing and powerful woman of Norwegian descent. It is likely that she killed both her husbands and all of her children at different times, but it is certain that she murdered most of her suitors, boyfriends, and her 2 daughters, Myrtle and Lucy. The motive was greed, pure and simple. Life insurance policies and assets stolen or swindled from her suitors became her source of income. Most reports put her death toll at more than 20 victims over several decades, with some claiming in excess of 100. Inconsistencies during her post-mortem examination. The corpse was reported to be 2 inches shorter than Belle's 6 feet. 4. Mary Ann Cotton. Englishwoman Mary Ann Cotton is another for-profit serial killer, predating Belle Guns by 30 years. Married at age 22 William Mowbray, the newlyweds settled in Plymouth, Devon, to start their family. The couple had 5 children, 4 of whom died of gastric fever and stomach pains. Moving back to the Northeast, tragedies seemed to follow them. 3 more children born, 3 more children died. William soon followed his offspring, dying of an intestinal disorder in January 1865. British Prudential promptly paid a £35 dividend, and a pattern was established. Her second husband, George Ward, died of intestinal problems as well as one of her two remaining children. The power of the press, always a force to be reckoned with, caught up with Marianne. The local newspapers discovered that as Marianne moved around northern England, she lost 3 husbands. A lover, a friend, her mother and a dozen children, all dying of stomach fever. She was hanged at Durham County Jail, March 24, 1873, for murder by arsenic poisoning. 3. Ilse Koch, die Hex von Buchenwald. The Witch of Buchenwald, or Buchenwalderschlamp. The Witch of Buchenwald was the wife of Karl Koch, commandant of the concentration camps Buchenwald from 1937 to 1941, and Majdanek from 1941 to 1943. Drunk on the absolute power rendered by her husband, she reveled in torture and obscenity. Infamous for her souvenirs, tattoos taken from the murdered inmates, her reputation for debauchery was well earned. After building an indoor sports arena in 1940, with 250,000 marks stolen from inmates, Ilse was promoted to Oberaufseherin, or chief overseer of the few female guards at Buchenwald. She committed suicide by hanging herself at Eichelt Women's Prison on September 1, 1967. 2. Irma Grese, another product of the Nazis' final solution. Irma Grese, or the Bitch of Belsen, was a guard at concentration camps Ravensbrück, Auschwitz and Bergen-Belsen. Transferred to Auschwitz in 1943, she must have shown particular enthusiasm and dedication to the job. She was promoted to senior supervisor, the second highest ranking female in camp, by the end of the year. In charge of over 30,000 Jewish female prisoners, she reveled in her work. Her work included savaging of prisoners by her trained and half-starved dogs, sexual excesses, arbitrary shootings, sadistic beatings with a plated whip, and selecting prisoners for the gas chamber. She enjoyed both physical and emotional torture and habitually wore heavy boots and carried a pistol to facilitate both. 1. Katherine Knight, the first Australian woman to be sentenced to a natural life term without parole. Katherine Knight had a history of violence in relationships. She mashed the dentures of one of her ex-husbands and slashed the throat of another husband's 8-week-old puppy before his eyes. A heated relationship with John Charles Thomas Price became public knowledge with an apprehended violence order that Price had filed against Knight, and ended with Knight stabbing Price to death with a butcher's knife. He had been stabbed at least 37 times, both front and back, with many of the wounds penetrating vital organs. She then skinned him and hung his suit from the door frame in the living room, cut off his head and put it in the soup pot, baked his buttocks, and prepared gravy and vegetables to accompany the roast. The meal and the vindictive note were set out for the children, luckily discovered by police before they arrived home. Make sure subscribe this channel.